Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a story from 30 years ago about our OP's mother. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Hating teacher humiliates, intelligent student blackmails. This happened to my mother around 30 years ago as she was in high school. First, I'll introduce you to BT, bad teacher, who's a French teacher. I recall I live in a French-speaking part of the world, and in his late 50s. He's a quite strange person overall. Once a student came at his place to apologize for not sitting a lesson, the person who opened the door was a woman in her early 20s, his wife, who was almost naked. BT came 1 minute later, a towel around his hips. The woman invited the student in to do something. At another time, the students had to summarize a book in front of the class. My mother picked a book she did not know about. BT looked pleased. It was a book about sex. She asked to change. He refused with his horrible grin. After she summarized this book, she was referred to be a B during the rest of her scholarship in this school. Why did he refuse? Certainly because he hated her. There were two persons called like my mother in her class, even though her first name was not so common. He called the other, let's say Karen, and he called my mom by her family name since the first day of school. This was humiliating because of two facts. One, this name is usually a first name used for boys, like John. Two, he used to say it as if he would have vomited, as if my mother was somebody despicable. Last point, he knew my mother wanted to be a lawyer. It was her dream since she was 6. This was only context, but a very, very important one. Let's jump into the story. The first time my mother had to do an essay for a mark with BT, he gave it back with an insufficient grade, around at D+ for Americans. This was a problem. She did essays at secondary school and always had good marks, around B. And he gave the result back to my mother and gently said this was horrible and that she should give up being a lawyer. That with those types of arguments, she will never succeed. This was a routine for about 1.5 years. Then, really worried by this situation, she talked about this to a friend of hers. She had that teacher and she had great marks, always A+. They noticed that BT usually puts the same subjects in the same order, so her friend gave my mother one of her essays. She had to copy it. The essays were made outside of class, so no chance for him to know what she did. The goal was for her to get a good grade. The next essay, it was jackpot. It was the same subject. My mother copied everything her friend wrote, used the exact same places for the commas. She was happy. She would finally get a good grade. D+. My mother was furious, but she was clever. She had a plan of revenge in the back of her head. After class, she talked to BT. Mom, sir, I have a problem. BT, what kind of problem? Mom, I think I deserve a better grade. BT, no, as I said, it was horrible. Forget to be a lawyer, you won't succeed. Mom, showing her friend's essay, I don't quite think so. I just copied from another student who had an A+. I should not have had a grade as bad as that. BT reads the first few lines of both of the texts. You jerk, you just cheated and say it in front of me? There will be consequences. We'll talk to the head principal and he'll give you an F. Mom, okay, if we go to the head principal, I think you'd have to explain why this student had an A+ and why I have a D+. Change my mark to an A+. BT was terrified. He had no chance of defense, and my mother, the one who could not be a lawyer, just defended her case better than any lawyer. He knew all of that. He gave her an A+ and the B she'd always deserved for the rest of her scholarship. BT was in fact right. She did not become a lawyer. She was a judge for around 6 years and is a notary. And our next story. Apparently, I was taking the garbage out wrong. I'm a paramedic in a large city. We went through a 10-year period of really awful management and as a result had many opportunities for malicious compliance. I was working on a single-person response vehicle, booking on and working by myself responding to 911 calls. As a result of our job, our vehicles had small containers for contaminated disposable equipment. The garage had a larger container for the same hazardous material. Because of our location, we had to take our red-bagged haz material to our regular garbage to the appropriate dumpster near the entrance to the facility, about a 500-meter trip. Being one of the rare people who emptied the garbage, I'd put the bags on the roof of my response unit and drive slowly and carefully to the entrance, dump the garbage, and carry on to work my shift. Apparently, the nearby EMS office has a view of the yard. A manager with too little real work to do noticed me doing this. He fired off an email saying I was unprofessional and shouldn't be moving garbage that way. My supervisor got the complaint, and being the pushover who wanted a promotion, told me I had to walk the garbage from now on, a 1,000-meter round trip. I explained how this was a ridiculous waste of time. Regardless, I was instructed to walk. Next time I needed to take out the trash, I picked up 2 of the 4 bags and started walking. When I reached the dumpsters, my radio went off, calling me for a cardiac arrest. I notified dispatch that I was not near my vehicle and would be delayed for a few minutes. This is a big deal. A delay of more than a minute or two in a cardiac arrest results in incident reports and an investigation. After the call, my supervisor met me and handed me an incident report asking what happened. I explained and confirmed the spelling of his last name for my report so I could indicate I was following direction. He backpedaled fast, knowing that the investigation would come back to him. It was amusing to watch. You'd think that was the end of it, but it's not. The same manager got wind of what happened and immediately fired back. It was my fault for not putting the garbage inside the response car and transporting it that way. The supervisor obviously failed to tell the manager that he told me to walk, so new orders from the supervisor: put the garbage in the response car, no problem. 4 garbage bags dripping with who knows what fluid went in the back seat, dropped them all off, then took myself out of service due to a possibly hazardous spill on the back seat fabric. Supervisor met me hopping mad. I asked him how he'd like me to handle the spill. As per SOPs, the vehicle had to be towed, seat had to be replaced because it was impossible to ensure the possible haz was removed. And that's the story of how my supervisor is now responsible for taking out the trash. I delightfully watched him put the garbage bags on the roof of his car and drive them to the dumpster. And our last story. You need to leave right now. Sure. I live in a country where the real estate agents do no work. They post an apartment on one of the real estate sites, and you need to chase them to see the listings at the precise time that they choose. I found an apartment that seemed okay, messaged the real estate agent on WhatsApp, to which he responds, "Call me." A little bit short, but no big deal. I give him a call, and again, he's very brisk on the phone, telling me that I must be on time as he's a very busy man. Okay, again, no big deal. The appointment's for 6 p.m. and I got stuck in a meeting, but still expected to be on time, but just in case, I texted him saying I'd be 5 minutes late. I show up at exactly 6:01 p.m. and see that he isn't even waiting for me. He has his real estate office on the ground floor of the building complex that I'm seeing the apartment. He's in his office doing work, and I walk into his office, say hi. He immediately starts complaining that I'm late. I apologize and say I'm here, but a friend, a local who's fluent in the local language, is going to be here shortly to see the apartment with me and should be here very soon. I call my friend and he says he's 2 minutes away, to which the real estate agent tells me he has another appointment that he'll have to make us wait until after the next appointment. I respond that my friend will be here very shortly and to please wait a little bit until he arrives. He responds that he makes sure all of his appointments are very organized and that he does not like having multiple people at the same time. I tell him I don't mind having someone else with me and can ask the next group if they don't mind seeing the apartment with me. He ignores this comment and keeps working. My friend then shows up at exactly 6:05 p.m. I know this because I checked my clock. My friend walks in, says hi, and the agent then takes his time getting up and locking his office so we can go upstairs to see the apartment. We walk to the 3rd floor, knock on the door, and the tenant lets us in. I start walking around and start chatting with the current tenant and his partner. The real estate agent says, "Don't talk to the tenant, look at the apartment." I continue walking around, see most of the apartment, then continue chatting with the tenant and begin asking questions about the apartment. I ask how is the noise in the apartment. The real estate agent immediately interrupts and says not to talk to the tenant. I ask the real estate agent why, and he ignores me. The tenant begins responding to the question and ignores the real estate agent, telling me that the apartment has practically no noise. Great. My next question is, how's the landlord? The real estate agent interrupts, saying very loudly, "What did you say?" I repeat my question to the real estate agent, and he says to not ask about the landlord, but continue looking at the apartment. The tenant begins responding that the landlord is fine, but the real estate agent again interrupts for us not to talk. I thought, okay, maybe the agent is stressed that the next appointment is coming, and I say, okay, can I have the tenant's number so we can talk afterwards? I appreciate that this is taboo to real estate agents, but speaking to the tenant is a must in my book, and if we can't speak now, then why not speak later? I had no intent of going around the real estate agent. The real estate agent loses it. He starts aggressively telling me to get out. You want me out? Fine. I go outside and wait on the front steps of the building and notice how it's 6:41, which is likely close to when he scheduled his next appointment. I see a couple approaching the building and approach them, asking if they're there to see the apartment. They say yes, and I proceed to tell them to be careful of the apartment and the landlord, as something is very wrong with it if the real estate agent does not want me to talk to the current tenant. The real estate agent starts yelling at me and threatening to call the cops. I ignore him until I complete the story to the new couple, to which they thank me and go inside with the real estate agent. We're not done yet. Still waiting outside, my friend sees someone new entering the building. He approaches the new guy, quickly telling him what just happened. The guy responds that, yeah, the real estate agent is awful and he'd be happy to give the number of his landlord. I call his landlord and explain the situation, to which he responds he's sorry this occurred and would be happy to give me the number of the actual apartment owner. I call up the actual owner, tell the owner the story. The owner apologizes that it happened and said she would talk to the real estate agent and see what can be done and that his behavior was not okay. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.